three ruthless bullies target a new black girl in her quiet suburban neighborhood. They think she's an easy target, alone, helpless, and scared. But just as they corner her in her driveway, two massive military dogs spring out from the shadows, halting the bullies in their tracks with bared teeth and fierce stares. What started as an ordinary walk home quickly turns into a jaw-dropping showdown that shakes the entire neighborhood. As a twisted video surfaces online, painting her as the villain, the world quickly turns its back on her. But these bullies have families hiding deep, dark secrets. Can one courageous girl and her loyal dogs expose the truth before powerful enemies tear her family apart for good? Before we dive in, drop a comment telling us where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's story will have you on the edge of your seat. Maya stood in the driveway, watching the moving truck pull away. The late August heat pressed down on her like a heavy blanket, making her cotton t-shirt stick to her skin. Their new house wasn't large, but its white siding and navy shutters looked neat against the backdrop of tall Georgia pines. "That's the last of them," Sergeant Luther Bell said, setting a box labeled "Kitchen" on the front porch. His dark skin glistened with sweat, but his posture remained military straight, despite his 67 years. "Ready to see your room, Maya?" She nodded, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. Across the street, a woman in yoga pants had stopped watering her flowers to stare at them. When Maya caught her eye, the woman waved quickly and disappeared inside. "Yes, sir," Maya replied, grabbing a lighter box of clothes. The wooden steps creaked under her feet as she followed her grandfather into their new home. Inside, it was cool, but just barely. "We need to get the AC running," Maya muttered to herself. As she climbed the stairs to her room, her footsteps echoed in the empty house. Her room faced the backyard with a window seat perfect for reading. She set her box down and ran her hand over the pale blue walls. "It's nice," she said, though it felt more like a reassurance to herself. Moving from their old apartment in Atlanta wasn't her decision, but after her grandmother passed away last spring, Sergeant Bell decided they needed a fresh start. A sharp bark from outside made Maya jump. She rushed to the window, a sense of relief washing over her when she saw Valor and Echo in their temporary kennel. The two German shepherds wagged their tails as they spotted her. "They're settling in just fine," her grandfather said from the doorway. "Once we get the fence checked, they'll patrol the yard like pros." Maya smiled at his words. Even retired, Grandpa never stops thinking like a military canine handler. "Can I let them out now? They've been cooped up all morning." "Let's meet some neighbors first," her grandfather said. "Don't want to startle anyone before the introductions." Just then, the doorbell rang. Maya followed her grandfather downstairs, where he opened the door to find a middle-aged white couple standing with a covered dish. "Welcome to Willow Creek," the woman said, her smile too wide. "I'm Susan Matthews, and this is my husband Dave. We're 3 houses down." She thrust the casserole dish forward. "Thought you might be hungry after moving all day." "Thank you, ma'am," Sergeant Bell said, accepting the dish with a polite nod. "I'm Luther Bell, and this is my granddaughter Maya." Maya noticed how Susan's eyes darted between them, lingering just a beat too long. Dave shuffled nervously. We noticed you have dogs," Dave said, motioning toward the backyard. "Big ones?" "Yes, sir," Sergeant Bell replied evenly. "Retired military working dogs, fully trained and certified." "Oh, military," Susan's smile faltered. "How interesting. Just so you know, the HOA has strict rules about pets, dangerous breeds, and all that." "They're not dangerous," Maya said quickly, her words sharp. "They're really well trained." "I'm sure they are, sweetie," Susan said, with a patronizing tone that made Maya's jaw clench. "We just want everyone to feel safe here." "Safety's my priority too," Sergeant Bell said firmly. 25 years as an Army K-9 handler taught me well enough. An awkward silence followed. Maya heard distant laughter and turned to see a group of teenage boys walking past the house. They slowed down, staring at her, whispering among themselves before moving on. "Those must be your new classmates," Susan said brightly. "Willow Creek High has a wonderful student body, very traditional values." Maya's stomach tightened at the emphasis on traditional values. Her grandfather must have sensed her discomfort, because he straightened up even more. "Thank you for the welcome," he said, "but we should get back to unpacking." After the Matthews left, Maya helped her grandfather put away dishes and arrange furniture until the sun began to set. Finally, he nodded toward the backyard. "Go on and check on Valor and Echo. They've been patient long enough." Maya didn't need to be told twice. She hurried outside, where the evening air had cooled slightly. The backyard was decent-sized, surrounded by a wooden fence that her grandfather had already inspected twice. Valor and Echo whined eagerly when she approached their kennel. She opened the gate, and they bounded out, pressing against her legs in greeting. Despite their size and training, they were gentle with her as always. "Good boys," Maya murmured, scratching behind their ears, relieved to finally feel a sense of comfort and familiarity after a long day. Echo licked Maya's hand gently, while Valor stood tall, his head scanning the surroundings. His alert ears caught every sound, every movement. The faint laughter from the street caught Maya's attention once again. The same group of boys from earlier, walking past for the second time. Tension crept up her spine, but Valor and Echo's presence brought her comfort. She watched as the dogs moved around the yard with grace and precision, their powerful bodies a reassuring sight. In that moment, under the fading light of dusk, Maya felt a flicker of peace settle within her. Whatever challenges lay ahead in this new place, she wouldn't face them alone. Maya's alarm buzzed sharply at 6 a.m. She lay still for a moment in her new bed, absorbing the unfamiliar sounds of suburban mornings, birds chirping, a car starting somewhere down the street, and the gentle breathing of Valor and Echo, who had slept in her room. "First day," she whispered to herself, pushing off the covers. The dogs' heads lifted in unison, watching her as she rummaged through moving boxes for her carefully chosen outfit. Dark jeans and a purple top, a gift from her grandmother last Christmas. In the bathroom, Maya took extra time with her hair, making sure every twist was perfectly neat. She stared at her reflection, brown eyes serious beneath her carefully shaped eyebrows. She touched the small gold necklace her grandmother had given her and took a deep breath. Downstairs, Sergeant Bell was already in the kitchen, dressed in his usual pressed khakis and polo shirt. The smell of eggs and toast filled the air. "Morning, baby girl," he greeted, sliding a plate in front of her. "Ready for your first day?" Maya poked at her eggs with her fork. "I guess so." Her grandfather sat across from her, his own plate untouched. "Maya, look at me." She met his steady gaze, feeling the weight of his words. Even after retiring, he carried himself with the same quiet authority he'd had in uniform. "You're stronger than you know. Your grandmother saw it, and I see it too. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself." Maya nodded, her throat tightening at the mention of her grandmother. "And remember," he added, "Valor and Echo are here if you ever feel unsafe. I've already spoken with the school. They know about our situation, and you have permission to call me immediately if anything happens." "Yes, sir," Maya replied, managing a small smile. "But I don't think I'll need to. It's just school, right?" Her grandfather's expression remained serious. "Sometimes the quietest places hide the most danger. Keep your eyes open and your head high." After breakfast, Maya grabbed her backpack and gave each dog a quick pat. They whined softly, as if sensing her nerves. The walk to the bus stop took exactly 7 minutes. She'd timed it the day before. She stood alone at the corner, watching other students gather in small groups further down the street. No one came near her. On the bus, Maya found an empty seat in the middle. As more students got on, she noticed they filled in around her, leaving the seats beside and behind her conspicuously vacant. Whispers and glances followed her like shadows. Willow Creek High was a sprawling brick building with white columns out front, trying hard to look like something from an old movie. Maya joined the stream of students flowing through the main entrance, clutching her schedule tightly. Her first class was English. She arrived early, choosing a seat by the window. As other students filed in, the whispers grew more obvious. "Did you see who moved in on Oakage? I heard they have attack dogs. My mom says the property values are going to drop." Maya kept her eyes on her notebook, nervously drawing small spirals in the margins. Mrs. Harrison, the teacher, was a thin woman with graying hair who barely looked up as she took attendance. The morning passed in a blur of unfamiliar faces and barely hidden stares. By lunch, Maya's shoulders ached from the tension of trying to stand tall and proud, just like her grandfather had taught her. The cafeteria was a sea of circular tables, most already claimed by established groups. Maya found an empty spot at the end of a table near the wall. She unpacked her lunch, another thing her grandfather had insisted on, not wanting her to have to stand in line on her first day. That's when she heard them. Well, look who it is. The voice was loud enough to carry across the cafeteria. Maya looked up to see 3 white boys approaching her table. The one in front was tall and athletic, wearing a football jersey. He had a smile that wasn't really a smile. "I'm Chad," he said, stopping in front of her table. "Chad Thompson, and these are my friends, Kyle and Derek." He gestured to the other 2, one stocky with a crew cut, the other lanky with a permanent sneer. "Maya," she said nothing, focusing on her sandwich. "That's some interesting hair you've got there," Chad continued, his voice carrying across the now silent cafeteria. "Must take a lot of work to get it to do whatever that is." Kyle, the stocky one, snickered. "Yeah, what do you call that style anyway?" Derek pulled out his phone. "Hey, maybe we should document this for the school paper. New student, unique fashion choices." Maya felt her cheeks burn as she heard the click of Derek's camera. Around her, the murmurs grew louder. Some students giggled, others just stared. Chad leaned in closer, his voice cutting through the silence. "And that complexion," he said, eyes gleaming with malice. "Must be hard to find makeup that matches, huh? Do they even make your shade at the mall?" Maya's hands trembled slightly as she packed up the remains of her untouched lunch. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "Don't let them see you cry, baby. That's what they want." She stood slowly, forcing her face to stay calm despite the hot tears threatening to spill. The cafeteria had gone eerily quiet, all eyes on her. No one spoke up. No one moved to help. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the sidewalks of Willow Creek as Maya walked home from the bus stop. The weight of her backpack felt heavier with each step. After the cafeteria incident, she'd spent the rest of the day trying to disappear, keeping her head down and speaking only when necessary. The streets of the neighborhood were quiet now, most houses empty, lawns still and pristine. Maya counted the houses as she passed, trying to distract herself. 12 houses to go. 11, 10. Then a loud engine roared to life, shattering the stillness. Maya's heart raced as she recognized the sound, the same pickup truck she'd seen Chad Thompson climb into after school. The engine revved again, this time closer. She kept walking, refusing to run. She remembered what her grandfather had taught her. Never show fear to those who want to intimidate you. The truck appeared behind her, moving at a crawl. She could hear male voices laughing, then the engine roared again as they sped up. Maya flinched despite herself. "Hey!" Chad's voice called from behind her. "New girl, don't you want a ride?" Maya kept her eyes straight ahead, counting the houses. 8 to go, 7. "Come on," Kyle's voice joined in. "We just want to be friendly." The truck crept up beside her now, moving at her pace. Maya could see it in her peripheral vision. A red Ford F-150, lifted high on oversized tires. Chad was behind the wheel, Kyle beside him, and Derek in the back. "What's wrong?" Derek yelled. "Too good to talk to us?" Maya's grip on her backpack straps tightened. 6 houses. 5. The truck revved again, surging ahead before slowing to match her pace. Maya could smell the exhaust and feel the vibrations of the engine in her chest. "Maybe she doesn't speak English," Kyle shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Do you understand us? Should we speak slower?" 4 houses. 3. Chad gunned the engine again, making the truck lurch forward before slamming on the brakes. Maya stumbled, heart pounding. She could see her house now, the familiar shape offering both relief and anxiety. She didn't want them to know where she lived. "Look at her run away," Derek taunted, "just like her kind always does." 2 houses. The truck surged forward once more, tires squealing against the asphalt. Maya watched as it sped past her house, the sound of their laughter trailing behind it. She stood frozen for a moment at the end of her driveway, trying to steady her breathing. Her hands shook as she reached for her house key. The front door opened before she could reach it. Sergeant Bell stood in the doorway, concern written across his face. Valor and Echo flanked him, their ears perked, alert. "Maya," he called softly. "Everything all right?" She climbed the porch steps, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I'm fine, Grandpa." But Luther Bell had survived 3 tours overseas. He knew when something was wrong. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder as she reached the door. "No, you're not," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Come inside and tell me what happened." Inside, Maya sat at the kitchen table, her grandfather pouring her a glass of water. Valor and Echo settled at her feet, their presence a silent comfort. "There were some boys," Maya began, her voice shaky. "In a truck. They followed me home." Luther's face hardened, but his voice remained calm. "The same ones from school?" Maya nodded, recounting the events from the cafeteria. With each word, she saw her grandfather's military demeanor sharpen, his posture becoming more rigid. "Listen to me," he said when she finished. "You are safe here. Those boys might think they run this neighborhood, but they've never dealt with someone like me before." He reached across the table and took her hand. "If this continues, I'll speak to the school myself, and if that doesn't solve it, we'll take it higher." Maya hesitated, a quiet voice whispering in her mind. "I don't want to make trouble." "Standing up for yourself isn't making trouble," Luther said firmly. "It's making a change. Your grandmother taught you that." Maya squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his words. Below the table, Valor and Echo pressed closer, their silent presence reinforcing the sense of safety they brought. The next morning, Maya arrived early at school, hoping to avoid any confrontations in the crowded hallways. The building was quieter than usual, only a few students moving through the corridors. As she made her way to her locker, she repeated her grandfather's words in her head. "Standing up for yourself isn't making trouble." Maya's voice faltered as she tried to explain, her emotions threatening to spill out. They called me names, said I think I'm better than everyone else, made fun of my hair, my skin, everything. They even said I shouldn't be here, that my dogs are dangerous." She swallowed hard, trying to hold back the tears that had been building all day. Luther's expression was calm, but Maya could see the muscles in his jaw tightening, the same way he had when he was preparing for something he knew wouldn't be easy. "Did anyone step in?" he asked softly, his voice steady despite the anger Maya could hear in his own heart. Maya shook her head. "No one. Not even the teachers really noticed. Or if they did, they didn't do anything." Luther sat up straighter, his posture becoming more rigid as he looked directly at Maya. "This isn't just about kids being kids, Maya. This is about something deeper, something that goes beyond their ignorance. You're not the problem, but they want you to believe that you are. You've been taught to stand tall, and that's exactly what you need to do now. Don't let them steal your dignity." Maya nodded slowly, the weight of his words sinking in. Valor and Echo shifted slightly at her feet, their heads tilting as if to offer comfort. "Tomorrow we go in together," Luther continued, his voice now firm with resolve. "I'll be with you at the school. We'll meet with the principal, and if that doesn't work, we'll take it higher. You don't have to face this alone, and you don't have to back down either." Maya glanced at the dogs. her mind racing. What if they just make things worse? They won't. We'll make sure of that. The truth has a way of coming out, even when it's been buried under lies and fear. You're stronger than they realize, Maya. Luther's gaze softened, and he placed his hand on hers. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Don't forget who you are. Maya took a deep breath, her heart a little lighter, but the fight ahead still weighing heavily on her shoulders. I won't forget, Grandpa. I'll do whatever it takes. But as she turned the corner onto her street, the calm she had been clinging to evaporated. The familiar rumble of an engine reached her ears. Maya's heart sank. It was Chad's truck again. She could see it idling at the corner of her block, its engine revving softly. Her eyes darted to the truck as it crawled forward, slowly gaining on her. She knew who was inside without even having to look. Chad behind the wheel, Kyle in the passenger seat, and Derek in the back, all of them waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maya's grip tightened on the straps of her backpack, but she kept walking. She didn't let herself speed up, didn't let herself show fear. Her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. Don't show them you're scared. Don't let them see you break. The truck pulled alongside her, and for a moment, everything went quiet. No revving engines, no laughter, just the heavy silence that seemed to hang in the air. Chad leaned out the window, smirking. Hey, new girl, he called. You sure you belong here? His voice was louder than it needed to be, like he was trying to make sure everyone heard. Maybe it's time you pack up and go home. Maya's jaw clenched. She had to do it. She had to keep walking, keep her head high, like her grandfather said. The truck kept pace with her, the tires grinding against the asphalt, making her chest tighten with every inch it closed the gap. She forced herself to look straight ahead, pretending she didn't hear them, but the words still stung. Maybe we should teach her a lesson, huh? Derek's voice was sharp, and Maya could feel his eyes boring into her. Show her what happens when you think you're better than everyone. But just as the tension became unbearable, she heard a voice break through the taunts. Mrs. Henderson, her English teacher, appeared from the school entrance. Is everything okay out here? She called, her gaze flickering between the truck and Maya. Chad's expression shifted instantly, dropping the mocking grin for a moment of false innocence. Yes, ma'am, he said with a sugary sweetness. We were just leaving. Good, Mrs. Henderson replied sharply, her voice firm. Then I suggest you do that. The truck engine growled one last time before Chad floored it, the tires squealing as they sped away. Maya stood frozen, watching the truck drive off, their laughter echoing down the street. Mrs. Henderson turned to Maya. Do you need a ride home, dear? She asked, her voice gentle. Maya hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. No, thank you. I'm fine. But neither of them believed that. She watched Mrs. Henderson walk back inside, the door closing with a soft thud behind her. The parking lot was empty again, save for the dull hum of the Georgia heat. Maya stood still for a moment, collecting her thoughts. Then, with a deep breath, she started walking again, her steps slower than before, her mind a swirl of frustration and exhaustion. When she got home, Maya walked into the kitchen, where Luther was waiting for her. Valor and Echo lay by the door, their eyes following her every movement. Maya dropped her backpack by the chair and sat down, her shoulders slumping. Luther looked up at her, his face full of concern. Everything okay, Maya? Maya tried to smile, but it felt forced. I'll be fine, she said, though the words felt hollow. Just another day. She wasn't sure who she was trying to convince more, him or herself. Luther studied her for a moment before he spoke again. You don't have to face this alone. We'll keep documenting, just like we talked about. And when you're ready, we'll take the next step. But you stand tall, Maya. You stay strong. And remember, you've got people who care about you, who won't let this slide. Maya nodded, trying to take comfort in his words. Valor and Echo came over to her, nudging her gently, offering their silent support. She scratched behind Valor's ears, the familiar sound of his tail thumping softly against the floor, grounding her. 1 week. Luther reminded her. "We'll handle it the right way." Maya sighed, the weight of the next steps pressing on her chest, but she nodded. She had a plan now, and that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could face another day. Maya's heart raced, her breath quickening as the boys closed in around her. She could feel the weight of their eyes, the pressure building in her chest. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Her back pressed against the familiar wooden fence, the yard she had once thought of as her safe space, now a reminder of how easily it could be taken from her. The world felt smaller with every step they took toward her. Chad, his grin widening, took another step forward. "What's wrong, Maya?" he taunted. "You scared? Thought you'd be safe in this neighborhood, huh?" He glanced at his friends, then back at her, his voice growing louder, more mocking. "Maybe you should just leave, go back to where you came from." Maya's hands clenched into fists, her body tensed, but she refused to back down. She had to stand her ground. She couldn't show them how much they were getting to her. Not now. She took a slow, steady step back, trying to keep her distance from them. "I'm not going anywhere," she said, her voice shaking only slightly as she tried to sound stronger than she felt. She glanced around desperately, hoping someone, anyone, would come by and see what was happening. But the street remained empty, the silence only broken by their jeering voices. Kyle stepped closer, cracking his knuckles. "What's the matter, Maya? Think you can talk your way out of this?" His voice dripped with sarcasm as he sneered at her. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. She tried to keep walking backward, but the corner was so close, and they were closing in on her with every step. Derek's phone stayed trained on her, capturing her every move, waiting for the moment she slipped, the moment she showed any sign of weakness they could exploit. She couldn't give them that. "Leave me alone!" Maya shouted, but the words felt hollow in the air. Her voice wasn't enough to push them back. She took another quick step backward, feeling her heel catch on the uneven sidewalk. For a brief moment, she lost her balance, her body stumbling. The boys laughed, their mocking laughter a cruel soundtrack to her humiliation. "Careful now," Chad called, his voice dripping with false concern. "Don't want to hurt yourself before we show you your place." He stepped forward, closing the gap even more, forcing her to retreat faster. Maya's mind raced. She was almost there, almost to the safety of her grandfather's yard. She could see the familiar flag, the garden they had planted together, but they were so close now, their faces twisted with a mix of excitement and cruelty. Her heart was in her throat, her legs ached, her body screamed to stop, to run, but she kept moving, one foot in front of the other, determined to make it. She was so close now. The edge of her grandfather's lawn was just a few steps away, but the boys were faster, quicker. They had her cornered, forming a tight circle around her. Maya's breath came in short gasps as she pressed herself against the wooden fence, the cool wood providing a small measure of comfort. But there was nowhere left to go. "Think you can get away now?" Kyle taunted, taking another step forward. Maya's hands shook, but she didn't let them see. She straightened her back, her head held high. She was so close, but they knew this part of the neighborhood, knew the time of day when no one would be around. This was when they could do whatever they wanted, without anyone to stop them. Chad's smirk never faltered, and for a brief, horrible moment, Maya felt trapped in their gaze. But then, just as the boys closed in around her, a sound broke through the tension. A door slammed open from the house behind her. "Maya!" Luther's voice boomed through the air, fierce and commanding. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Her grandfather, standing at the edge of the porch, his voice steady and filled with authority, took a step toward them. Valor and Echo stood beside him, their ears perked, their bodies tense, as if sensing the danger. The boys froze, their smirks faltering for the first time. "You've got a problem," Luther called, his voice unwavering. He stepped off the porch, his eyes never leaving the boys, his posture exuding strength and command. Valor and Echo were at his side, their silent presence enough to stop the boys in their tracks. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, with a mix of reluctance and anger, Chad turned to his friends. "Let's go," he muttered, his voice barely audible now. Kyle and Derek exchanged looks, then followed him, their heads down as they climbed back into the truck. The truck roared to life, tires squealing as they sped off down the street, their laughter fading in the distance. Maya stood frozen for a moment, trying to calm her breathing, her chest still heaving. Luther walked over to her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer now, but still carrying that same strength. Maya nodded, though her heart was still racing. "I'm fine. Thanks, Grandpa." Luther squeezed her shoulder, his voice low but firm. "Don't ever let them think they can scare you. You've got this, and you've got me, always." Maya looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief wash over her. It wasn't over, not yet, but with her grandfather by her side and Valor and Echo, she knew she could face whatever came next. The officers looked at Mr. Harrison, then at Maya, their faces unreadable. Maya's heart pounded in her chest, and her hands clenched at her sides, trying to keep the anger from boiling over. Valor and Echo, sensing her tension, stiffened slightly, but remained at attention, their eyes never leaving the officers. They were trained to protect, not to harm, unless provoked. Maya's mind raced, trying to figure out how to make them understand the truth. One of the officers, a tall man with graying hair, stepped forward, his gaze shifting from Mr. Harrison to Maya. "Ma'am," he said in a neutral tone, "can you explain what happened here?" Maya took a deep breath, keeping her voice as steady as possible. "They were harassing me, following me, taunting me, and then they blocked my way. I had nowhere to go. Valor and Echo reacted to protect me." The officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "And you didn't command them to attack?" "No," Maya said firmly, shaking her head. "They didn't attack anyone. They're trained to protect me, and they did exactly that when they saw I was in danger." The second officer, a younger woman, stepped forward, her gaze flicking over to the dogs, then back at Maya. "So, you didn't tell them to act aggressively toward these boys?" "No, I didn't," Maya repeated. "They've been trained to stay by my side and to only act if I'm in danger. These boys were threatening me." Behind her, she could hear the sound of Chad's voice rising again, his tone gaining confidence now that the adults were present. "You see, officer," he said, his voice laced with mock concern. "She's just making up excuses. Her dogs came after us for no reason." "That's not true!" Maya's voice cracked as she turned to face him. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to keep calm. "You were threatening me. You were following me." The older officer held up a hand to calm the tension. "We'll need to get both sides of the story. Mr. Harrison, if you could step aside, we'll take your statement in a moment." Mr. Harrison, still visibly flustered, nodded, shooting one last glance at Maya before stepping back. The younger officer turned to the boys. "And you three?" she said sharply. "Do you have anything to add?" Chad looked between the officers and Maya, his expression shifting from smug to uncertain as the weight of the situation began to sink in. Kyle still looked terrified, his eyes darting around as though looking for a way to escape. Derek, who had been recording the entire scene, lowered his phone, the earlier bravado gone from his face. "We were just messing around," Chad muttered. "She's the one who made the dogs attack us." The younger officer didn't miss the hesitation in his voice. "That's so? And you were just walking by when she sicked her dogs on you, is that it?" Chad opened his mouth, then seemed to realize the hole he was digging for himself. "Well, yeah, I mean, we were just talking to her, but then the dogs went crazy." The officer raised an eyebrow. "So you're saying the dogs attacked you for no reason?" "Yeah, that's what happened," Kyle added, his voice shaky. The officer gave a quick nod and turned to her partner. "We've got the story from these kids. Let's check the evidence." She approached Maya, who stood still, waiting for them to understand the truth. Valor and Echo were still standing at her side, their bodies tense but calm, their eyes fixed on the officers. The officer crouched down to their level, looking at them both. She gave a soft whistle, and Valor's head turned, his eyes scanning her. The officer reached a hand toward him, and after a moment, Valor let her gently stroke his fur. Echo's eyes stayed fixed on the boys, still on alert. The officer nodded. "I've worked with K9s before. These dogs are highly trained and disciplined. They wouldn't act without being provoked." Maya felt a small measure of relief, but it was fleeting. She knew this wouldn't be over yet. The confusion, the lies, and the twisted narrative would only continue unless she could make them see the truth. The older officer turned back to Mr. Harrison. "Sir, you made a call to 911, correct?" "Yes, I did," Mr. Harrison replied, looking flustered. "These dogs are dangerous. They shouldn't be in a neighborhood like this." Maya stepped forward, her voice steady now, stronger. "They're not dangerous. They've been trained to protect. They've never hurt anyone who didn't deserve it." The officer stood up and placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Ma'am, we'll need to take statements from everyone involved, but it looks like the situation is not as straightforward as it first appeared." Maya nodded, her heart still racing. But for the first time that afternoon, she felt a glimmer of hope. She hadn't lost control of the narrative. She still had a chance. The room was silent, save for the occasional sound of Valor and Echo's tags rattling softly against the kitchen floor as they lay quietly by the door, still and watchful. Maya's mind replayed the events over and over, the images of her dogs being taken from her flashing in her mind like an unending nightmare. Her grandfather sat across from her, his eyes dark with quiet fury, but his face was calm, controlled. He hadn't said a word since the van had pulled away with Valor and Echo inside. He was a soldier, a protector, but right now, he felt as powerless as she did. Maya's hands shook as she held the mug, the chocolate long forgotten and cold. The hurt, the confusion, and the anger all tangled together, a knot in her chest she couldn't untie. Why didn't anyone listen? She had shouted the truth, but all they saw was the dogs, dangerous, violent, when they had only been protecting her. Luther finally broke the silence, his voice quiet, but filled with the weight of years of experience. "We'll fix this, Maya. I promise you. We'll get them back. We'll make sure the truth comes out." Maya blinked, her vision blurred by tears that wouldn't stop. "But they're gone, and they're going to make it look like it was our fault. They don't even care that they were protecting me. All they care about is their story." Luther exhaled deeply, rubbing a hand across his face as though trying to release some of the tension. I know. But we won't let them get away with this. You're stronger than they think, Maya. We're going to do this right. We're going to take it to court if we have to." "But how?" "Everyone believes them. Mr. Harrison's got everyone on his side. He's the one who called the police. He's the one spreading the lies," Maya said, her voice cracking with frustration. She buried her face in her hands, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. Luther stood up, walking over to her with slow, deliberate steps. "Listen to me, Maya. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. We have everything we need. Those dogs were trained to respond to threats, and we have all their records. We'll prove it." Maya sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "But what if they won't listen? What if they don't care about the truth?" "They will," Luther said, his voice firm with conviction. "I've been through this before. It's not about what they believe now. It's about showing them what really happened. And it starts with us. We'll fight. We'll get the right people involved." He paused, looking out the window as if weighing his next words. "I've seen things, Maya. Things that tested me. Things that made me want to give up. But we don't. We stand up, and we fight until we can't anymore." Maya raised her head, looking up at him with tear-streaked cheeks. "But they're gone, Grandpa. They're gone because of them." Luther walked back to the kitchen counter and grabbed the papers he'd set aside earlier, the registration and service records for Valor and Echo. He spread them out in front of her. "These records, this proof, this is what's going to get them back. They're not just going to disappear because someone says something. We've got more than just words, Maya. We've got facts." Maya glanced at the papers. Her dogs, her protectors, trained, loyal, disciplined. This wasn't their fault. She knew it deep down. They had done exactly what they were meant to do, protect her. But right now, the world was painting them as monsters, and somehow that hurt more than anything else. "How long do you think this will take?" she asked softly, her eyes searching her grandfather's face for some sign of reassurance. Luther met her gaze, his expression resolute. "As long as it takes. We'll do this right, Maya, and we'll make sure they understand what really happened." Maya took a deep breath, her chest tightening as she tried to calm herself. She wiped the last of her tears away. "Okay, we'll fight. For Valor and Echo, we'll do it for them." Luther nodded and patted her shoulder gently, a quiet strength in his touch. "That's my girl. We'll get through this." As she sat there, looking at the papers, she could almost hear Valor and Echo in her mind, their loyal growls, their calm presence, their determination to protect her no matter what. She could feel their spirits with her, like a shield against the uncertainty ahead. And though the road ahead would be long, full of obstacles and setbacks, Maya knew one thing for certain. She wasn't alone. She had her grandfather, and she had Valor and Echo, and together they would fight to set things right. Truth stands. The phrase repeated in Maya's mind, a quiet anchor amidst the storm of hate and confusion that had taken over her life in the past few hours. She leaned back in her chair, trying to steady herself, her hand still resting in her grandfather's firm grip. Luther's presence was solid and unshakable, like a rock in the midst of the chaos, and it gave her strength, even when the world around her seemed to be falling apart. The video, the lies, the hate, they were all spreading like wildfire, but her grandfather's words reminded her that truth was a force that couldn't be ignored, no matter how hard they tried to twist it. Maya looked at her phone one last time, the flood of notifications making her stomach churn. The comment sections were filled with venomous comments, cruel accusations, and calls for action against her family. The lies were multiplying by the second. But Luther was right. Truth stands, and they had the truth. She exhaled, trying to shake off the weight of it all. It felt suffocating, the constant pressure from everyone around them, twisting the narrative, turning their protectors into villains. But we have the truth, she reminded herself again. And now it was time to fight back. Luther finished making a call, his voice steady but intense. "I'll have them here tomorrow," he said, his tone leaving no room for doubt. He hung up the phone and turned to Maya, his expression hardening. "We've got some work to do, Maya. It's time to make sure they hear our side, loud and clear." She nodded, grateful for his determination, but also feeling the weight of what lay ahead. It wasn't just about getting Valor and Echo back anymore. It was about standing up to the lies, standing up for herself and her family, and showing the world what was truly happening. "We'll need witnesses," Luther said thoughtfully, pacing the room as he spoke. "We need people who saw what really happened, people who know the truth, and we'll need to get to the right people at the top, the ones who can help us make this right. They'll see through the lies once we present the facts." Maya stood up, feeling a surge of energy as she wiped away the last of her tears. "Let's do it, Grandpa. Let's fight for Valor and Echo. Let's fight for the truth." Luther smiled slightly, a proud gleam in his eye. "That's my girl." They spent the next few hours gathering their evidence, collecting every document, every piece of proof they could find. Luther made more calls, reaching out to old contacts, people who knew his military work and the impeccable training he had instilled in Valor and Echo. Maya, though exhausted, focused on the task at hand. She had never felt more determined. The world might be against them now, but she knew that if they fought with everything they had, they would find a way to win. The next morning, as the sun crept over the horizon, casting light on a neighborhood that still buzzed with gossip and fear, Luther stood tall, his posture unwavering. He was ready to take on whatever came next. Maya, standing beside him, felt the same strength. Together, they would face this challenge head-on. The battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but with truth as their weapon and the strength of their bond, they were ready to take on anything. The truth would stand, and they would make sure the world knew it. Maya felt her heart sinking with each door they knocked on. The sun had started to set, painting the sky in hues of gold and purple, but the warmth of the evening couldn't erase the cold knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. Every door they approached seemed to close quicker than the last, every polite but dismissive "sorry, can't help," making her feel more isolated. But she couldn't stop now. She couldn't let this continue without a fight. Luther, walking beside her, kept his head high, his shoulders straight, despite the weight of the task they were facing. He didn't show the frustration that Maya felt. Instead, he exuded a quiet confidence that she tried to draw from, but it wasn't easy. They reached the end of the block, where the last house loomed ahead, a large, white colonial with a manicured lawn and a well-maintained front porch. Maya's footsteps faltered for a moment. She didn't want to knock on this door. She had a feeling she already knew what the answer would be. Luther noticed her hesitation and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We keep going, Maya. We have to. For Valor and Echo. For the truth." She nodded, trying to shake the heaviness weighing her down. They stepped up to the front door, and Luther rang the bell, the sound echoing through the quiet evening air. The door creaked open, and a man in his 50s stood in the doorway. His expression softened slightly as he looked at them, but Maya could tell from his eyes that he had already made up his mind. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice polite but guarded. "Good evening," Luther began. "I'm Sergeant Luther Bell, and this is my granddaughter Maya. We're here to talk about some recent events in the neighborhood." The man's eyes flicked over to Maya, and for a moment she saw something in them, maybe recognition, maybe discomfort, but it was quickly replaced with an unreadable expression. "I know why you're here," he said, his voice a bit too calm. "I've heard all about what happened, but I'm afraid I'm not going to get involved." Maya's stomach twisted. "What do you mean? You've heard about the harassment, the threats, everything." He raised a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not saying I don't feel for you, but these things, well, they have a way of working themselves out. I've lived here a long time. You don't want to stir things up." Maya's heart raced. "But they started it. They've been bullying me, my grandfather, and now they've taken our dogs. Our dogs. They were protecting me." Her voice wavered, but she pressed on. "I'm not asking for charity. I'm asking for fairness." The man shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting briefly to the side. He looked as though he was considering something, but then his gaze hardened again. "This neighborhood, it has its way of keeping things peaceful. The people here, they don't want trouble, and trouble follows when people like you start making a scene." Maya's breath caught in her throat, her hands trembling at her sides. "You mean because we're not like them," she whispered, barely able to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Because I'm black and my dogs are military trained, you're going to let them get away with this." The man's face stiffened. It's not about that, he muttered, but there was no conviction in his words. Just leave it alone. Maya stepped back, anger flooding her chest. I can't. I won't. Luther, his expression calm but firm, spoke up. Sir, we've been fighting for our rights, and we're not backing down now. We have documentation, we have proof, and we will go to the authorities if we have to. The man sighed, his shoulders sagging with what Maya could only assume was resignation. I'm sorry, he muttered. I really am, but I can't do anything. You're on your own. Without another word, he shut the door in their faces. Maya stood there for a moment, staring at the door, the weight of it all pressing down on her. She couldn't believe it. They had tried. They had fought for a chance, for someone, anyone, to stand with them. But all she had gotten was rejection. Luther's hand gently touched her shoulder again, grounding her. We don't stop here, Maya. There's always another way. We'll find someone who will listen. Maya nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. I know, but it's hard, Grandpa. It's hard when everyone's against you. I know, baby girl, Luther said softly, but the truth stands, and we'll make sure it does. They walked back down the street, their footsteps echoing through the now quiet neighborhood. Maya looked at the ground, her heart heavy, but she knew that Luther was right. They couldn't stop now. They had to keep going, keep pushing, keep fighting, because the truth would stand, no matter how much they tried to bury it. As they turned the corner onto their street, Maya felt the weight of the battle ahead, but she also felt a spark of determination ignite within her. They would not let the lies win. Maya sat on the porch steps, Valor and Echo resting at her feet, their heads resting gently in her lap as the soft morning sunlight warmed her face. It had been a long and difficult journey, but now, as she looked around at the neighborhood, she could see the change. The fear that had once filled the streets was finally beginning to lift. It had taken courage to stand up, to keep pushing forward, even when the world seemed to turn against her. But with each step, with each person who had spoken out, they had fought for the truth. They had shown Willow Creek what it meant to stand up for what was right, even when the odds were stacked against them. By staying strong, by not letting them break your spirit, you showed everyone what courage looks like, Luther said softly, sitting beside her. Maya stroked Valor's neck gently, feeling the warmth of the moment, the peacefulness that had been hard-earned. Echo nuzzled closer to her, as if reaffirming their bond. They had been through so much, but now they were together, and that was all that mattered. She smiled, looking at the neighborhood around her. People were laughing, kids were playing freely, and neighbors were walking past, waving and calling greetings. The streets that had once felt so cold, so hostile, now felt different. Not perfect yet, but changing, moving towards something better. These streets are ringing with new voices, Maya said, looking up at her grandfather. We did it together. Luther smiled, his pride evident. All of us, Maya. Every one of us. The weekend barbecue was in full swing, and Maya could see the preparations taking place at the park at the end of Oakage Lane. Tables were being set up, lights were strung between trees, and a banner had been hung that read, "Welcome to the real Willow Creek, where everyone belongs." It was a simple message, but one that carried so much weight. A neighborhood that had once been divided, broken by fear and misunderstanding, was now coming together. Maya could hear the distant sounds of laughter and the clinking of plates, the vibrant hum of a community finally finding its voice. It was a small step, but it was a start toward healing, toward understanding, toward unity. As she watched the scene unfold, Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. She had fought for what was right, and now, together with her family and the neighbors who had supported her, they had created something new, something better. You did this, Luther said, his voice proud. You showed them all what it means to stand tall, to never give up. Maya leaned back, feeling the warmth of the sun on her skin, the soft weight of Valor and Echo beside her. The road had been long, but it had been worth it. They had stood their ground, and now they were part of a community that truly belonged to everyone. As the day went on, the barbecue filled with neighbors, laughter, and conversations about change. Maya knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but for the first time in a long while, she felt hopeful. The truth had stood strong, and now, together, they had built something new. She watched as the neighborhood continued to come together, the sound of children's laughter ringing through the air, and the sight of families working side by side to create a better future. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, and that was enough for now. Maya smiled, her heart light with the knowledge that this was only the beginning, a new chapter for Willow Creek, and for herself. And with that, the story came full circle, reminding everyone that no matter how hard the fight, no matter how many obstacles stood in the way, the truth would always stand, and so would they.